Hi, welcome to this two-part series on wireframing. This is part one. We're going to focus on, why we want to wireframe, the concept of it, good techniques, and some tools that we can use to wireframe very, very quickly. Now, the concept of wireframing is nothing new, to be honest with you. Anytime there is a complex task that needs to be dealt with, it helps to have a good plan. And that's, a good philosophy for everything in life. Have a good plan. Now, we could jump into a web page and start coding and start, making things up on the fly. But chances are we're going to end up creating a lot more work for ourselves because we're guessing. Half the time we're not really sure what we need. Sometimes, the navigation bar is still a work in progress. So what we're trying to do with wireframes is take out as much of the guesswork as possible here. The reason being, wireframes are very easy to generate and very fast, and it's a great way to get your ideas, which is what you're really getting paid for, on paper, whether it's virtual or actual paper. Get your ideas down, make sure everything is accounted for, try out a couple of different scenarios very quickly in case you're not sure about some things, and basically use that as a guide for the more complex tasks that are going to be taking place later on in the project. For example, following wireframes, you're probably going to have to deal with mockups. Let's take a quick look at what wireframes look like. I have a couple of examples here. There's a very simple example of a wireframe for a web page. As you can see, it's extremely rough. If we're focusing here on this main area of the design, it has very simple graphics in there. No photography. Everything is just boxes and containers and some filler text. The reason why is because we don't want to spend this time with these details. We're working on high-level stuff, just making sure our ideas are in place. Perhaps we've spoken to our client, or perhaps we have an idea for our concept. We want to make sure that all the requirements are met on this page so we can account for them. For example, do we want an article page going full screen across? What are the consequences? Do we want to leave a bit of white space here? How many banner ads can we fit effectively? How many related stories can we fit? So you could try out like different things. Okay, well, 3 is okay. What if I try to fit 4? Because you're using these basic shapes, it's very easy to try and see what adding 4 would look like, and then you can decide, well, maybe they're too small, screw it, I'll stick with 3. Now, doing that with HTML, or even in Photoshop if you're doing a high-level mock-up, takes hours, and you don't want to waste that time doing that stuff. You want to make sure you can do it beforehand. Okay, I think you guys understand. We'll move on to some examples here. Let's see. So here's a page. Another reason why we want wireframes is we want to show interactions. Interactions, activities, different states for our page. So, here's a typical page. How do we explain to somebody that when they click or tap this button up here, this link, little hamburger icon, how do we explain to them what happens? I can sit here and describe it. Oh, it's going to open a panel, and this panel is going to have a few links. There's even going to be a search box in it. Well, okay, that's pretty good. The end user or the person I'm talking to might understand what they can expect, but they can't really visualize it because, even though we're speaking the same language, we might interpret those words in different ways in our minds visually. So what you want to do is create a very quick example. It's like, hey, here's exactly what it's going to look like. And, building this extra little layer that you can add onto a different wireframe, just copy this page and add the different hover state or click state. It really takes no time at all. It probably would have taken 10 minutes to draw out a couple of boxes and copy and paste in some text. And, things like the magnifying glass and text field, we're going to look at some tools that allow for rapid wireframing with pre-built libraries. Now, a couple of other examples that we can look at, something like this. And as you can see, the trend here is keeping things extremely simple. We don't want to get into too much detail. Just basic shapes, just, headlines. You can even use bogus text. You don't have to worry about color schemes at this point. You don't have to worry about photography. You just want to make sure that all the elements are in place. Now, one thing you might want to do and take some time handling is, use accurate names in the navigation. For example, up here, the login should say login. It shouldn't all just be gibberish. And try adding some proper headlines, so at least at a very high level, the large text that does stand out has some meaning, right? So, event calendar, Twitter feed, it'll let people understand what it is they're looking at. For the smaller stuff, like little blurb text underneath, the teaser text and all that stuff, lorem ipsum is fine. The little Latin text snippets are fine, or just placeholder text, whatever. You'll also be able to work out, here on the right, you can see that it's pretty much the same layout, however, we're accounting for the mobile layout. So if we look at this design and this design, we can easily see how this mobile layout is going to come into play. So the logo is going to be here, the login button is going to be here, and these are all decisions that are taking place way before the design process, because then we can assign different levels of importance and priority and compromise if we have to for certain things to make sure our project objectives are being met. It's also a good opportunity to number some of these big areas and provide a little legend that allows anybody that this gets handed to a very quick understanding of what it is they're looking at. All right, like what's number 5? Area designated to add space. And it's fairly obvious, but you never know. These 4 icons, these little 4 boxes up here, that might be a little more vague, but if I look here, social media links. These will link to the appropriate external sites. I get it. I don't need to see the Twitter icon or the Facebook icon. That stuff is already taking up too much time and is too much work. I just want to throw in a couple of boxes to suggest. All right, so we now know why we need wireframes. We know the degree to which we need to add a certain level of detail. How can we create them very quickly and easily? Now, I'm a big fan of pencil and paper. If you feel that you can work creatively with pencil and paper, there's nothing stopping you from doing wireframes there. Just sketch out your ideas, draw in a couple of boxes, scribble in some text and mark out those areas. And there are plenty of, opportunities to just discard the paper that you're not happy with and start a new one. You can mix and match, you can try different ideas all very quickly, and you don't even have to be in front of a computer. You could be in a cafe with your sketch pad and knock out those ideas one after the other. Now, if you're going to be doing something, a bit more, you need to have a tighter design, something you're going to present to a client, something that's going to, circulate in your work group and stuff. You might want to take the time to tighten it up a bit more than just pencil sketches. And even, from the pencil sketches, you can come to this step, which is, doing something using an application. And it could be something like even Adobe Illustrator. Creating stuff like this in Adobe Illustrator isn't that difficult. There are specialized applications that exist. We're going to be looking at one of them shortly. We're going to spend about 5 minutes getting used to the interface, and part 2 will focus on actually building something with it. One of the applications I've been playing around with and pretty happy with is one called mockups. So if you go to the website called mockups, and that's with a Q, mockups.com, it's an online tool that you can use in your browser to create wireframes. So no matter where you are, as long as you have an interconnection and a browser, you can go into your project and create new files and edit. It's all pretty cool. So there's a free edition which has it's fully functional, but it just has a limited amount of files you can save, etc. It's semi-crippled, uh, encouraging you to pay for a full membership. For the purposes of this exercise, we can use the free version, no problem. So let's click now to open an account. Click the button there. Loads up the workspace. So very quickly, we'll take a look at the workspace here. You get a welcome video. That's fine. We're just going to click here to start designing, or you can just close the window here. And what you end up with is a page here in the center with already a few things filled out. There's the left side panel over here. There's the strip of utilities along the top. And then there's the right-hand side here, which provides additional tools. Let's take a quick look at how to use this very quickly. If you press the space bar on your keyboard, you'll be able to trigger the little Mickey Mouse glove here, and if you click your mouse on your paper, you're able to drag it and move it around. Now this is pretty handy because, as you can see here, you can zoom in. If you want to work in a very detailed area with a lot of things going on, you can zoom in using the magnifying glass to see something in a lot more detail, which is helpful if you're working on small things, small buttons, you want to line things up nicely. And again, with the space bar, it allows you to click and then click with your mouse and then drag your page around so that you can move to a different part. Let go of your mouse and click it again, and it's basically you're just grabbing and moving your page around without having to zoom out all the time. So that's a very handy feature. Get accustomed to working with the keyboard. There's some nice shortcuts in here. For example, if I want to zoom out to regular size, if you reset the zoom, you can click the magnifying glass, or as you can see in that window there, you can press on Control 0. So in the brackets, it'll give you the keyboard shortcut for that particular function in the application. So without clicking that magnifying glass, if I press Control 0, for example, my page zooms out back to 100%. I should mention you do want to be working at 100% because that's the actual size most viewers will see your web page when they get to it. So this is your wireframe, and 100% is actual size. Zooming out gives you, the fonts are a bit smaller and not actual size, and of course too big, you might get carried away and think, oh wow, this text is huge, I should make it smaller. Don't do that. Make sure you're at 100%. A couple of other areas here. The left-hand side is where you're probably going to get most of the action. It's composed of stencils and pages and a few other functions that we might look at. On the right, you have details. So if you click on an object here, you'll see that this changes right away, depending on the type of object you choose. Right? So there are some common elements. The first thing you'll always notice is the dimensions. It'll give you here the width and the height. This will tell you how many pixels away from the left margin and top margin this box is. So if I move it, you'll notice these values change. In the top left corner here, you'll see that it snaps in place with these pink guidelines. When I move it to 0.0, let me zoom in a little bit. You'll notice that the pixel values are displayed in the little box next to my cursor. Also, these pink lines indicate that there are things that are aligned, shapes that are lining up. So now it's aligned with the edges of my page. And if I look here, the position is 0 and 0, meaning X horizontal and Y being vertical. Sometimes these values are very handy if you're going to be translating this design into HTML. Then you can use accurate values for the dimensions and everything, and it makes life a bit easier. Working with objects on this page is very similar to, if you've used PowerPoint or Adobe Illustrator or any of these applications where you can dump a bunch of objects on a page. It should be fairly similar. You can drag to grab a whole bunch of them. You can grab individual elements. You can, grab multiple, right-click, and group. The right-click menu is fairly powerful here, even in your browser. You can use it for everything from duplicating things. There you go, you just made another copy of that, which is very handy if you're doing repetitive things like buttons or navigation items, for example, to entire chunks of code like this. You can lock certain selections so that if you're trying to select things around them or working on top of them, you're not constantly accidentally clicking on that shape and moving it. So if I click lock for this selection here, what happens is you get these red outlines around it. And if I try clicking on it, not much happens. I can't move it. It tells me that, the red tells me that it's locked. I can still see it, but can't do much with it. Now to fix that, I can right click and unlock the selection, and then it returns back to normal. And there you go. This one is still locked. Sometimes you'll have objects that are underneath other objects because as we're building our page, each one of these elements is stacked on a new layer, on its own layer. So what we want to do sometimes is prevent certain shapes from being hidden behind others. A couple of ways you can go about doing it. You can select the shape here. You can arrange and bring it to the front or just a couple of layers forward, depending on your situation. Or you can grab the item that's hiding it and go to, arrange, send to back, or send it backwards a few layers in case it's hiding it. Now you'll notice that if I click arrange, the shortcut keys are also ingrained next to these functions. So holding down, for example, Control Up will move the selected object upwards in the layer stack, and the other shortcuts will work accordingly. So if I want to bring this to the top over this blue container over here, I would right-click this object, arrange, and in this case I'll just bring to the front, and there it is. Now it's over this blue box. If I need to worry about other shapes, then you can use this technique to bring them forward. Oops. So arrange, bring to front. And if I see that there are a lot of them and it would just make sense for me to take this blue box and move it backward, I would unlock it, and then I would just go to arrange and send it to the back. Boom. So now all the other elements are in a layer over it. Deleting stuff, fairly straightforward. Select what it is you want to delete, whether it's one item or multiple items, and just press delete on your keyboard. If that happens accidentally, there is an undo, and again, it matches with your regular stuff, Control Z, Control Z. If there are elements like this, for example, that are composed of two or more units, you can actually join them so that you can concentrate just on moving them all as a whole if they're perfectly placed. So select both of these items by dragging. And you don't have to drag the whole shape, even grabbing part of it is good. And basically right click and group them. On the left, let's actually delete everything. So we're just going to go everything, delete. On the left you have your stencils, and basically what these are little prefabricated elements that altogether will make up your web page. Think of it as your different Lego items, and with those Lego items you can build whatever you like. So something like headings, you can insert a heading here just by dragging it in and basically typing out this is heading 1, And if you choose, you can make it a smaller size using the menu over here. You get some information. You could change the font. And the fonts that are listed in here are Google fonts. So that's pretty cool because, there you go, you can use Google fonts to automatically preview what it would look like if you were building this as a web page and you have access to Google fonts. You prefer to use it. There we go. That's a nice heading. So already you're adding a bit of context with very minimal effort to this wireframe. You can change the size, you can change the color. So you don't want to go too far with this. You want to keep it as simple as possible. Playing around with color at this stage introduces complexity that we're not interested in. What we want to do is make sure we are putting our web page together the way we like, the way we envision it. So, there's a lot of schools of thought here. One is, okay, find all the elements I need, drag them onto my page, and I'll worry about sorting them later. So that's one approach. We need some paragraph text. We need maybe, let's see, a calendar, because that's what my application calls for. Footer has a map, right? So I can continue adding all these elements, and if you look in here in this list, it's pretty robust. I'll just grab a navigation bar also on here. There you go. It's got all sorts of stuff, buttons and little elements for mobile, for everything. So just go down the list, look for what you're looking for. If they even have charts. If you want to add a pie chart in there, you can do that. So now that you have your elements available and you don't have to keep going back to the toolbar, you can start arranging these. Now for arrangement, you have a couple of options. You can use guidelines, just as you would in an Adobe Illustrator application. And you saw what I did was I just clicked on the ruler here and dragged. And you click and drag and you can pull out an infinite number of these guidelines, so you can start breaking your page down into header areas, main sections, footers, and you can just hover over them to move them accordingly. This might be a bit overkill at this point, so what you can do is up here in the top corner you can go to Workspace. So let's zoom in there a little bit, and in Workspace you can clear the guides. Let's go here. This button will clear all these blue guidelines that we just put in. You'll get a little warning, and when you click OK, all these guidelines disappear. It's a lot faster than having to delete these one by one. So, you can start making progress that way, but at some point you will want to save your work. Now, at this point, you want to make sure that you, have an account ready to go. We'll sign up here, click the sign up and pricing button. And if you notice this area here with pricing, none of it is free. It's because their free plan is listed down here in this area. So keep an eye out for that. Can't blame these people. They're putting together a nice application and would like to see some money for their work. For today, let's click on the free plan. And you can sign up with Google. That's what I did. Or you can create an account. Sign up with Google. One of my accounts here. And there you have it. So you might get a message, well, I just did, called quota exceeded. That means that I'm using more objects than my free plan allows for. Based on what I'm seeing down here, I'm only using 8 out of 300 objects. So no, not yet. Sorry, I think that might be a technical glitch. And what happens is, once I'm signed in, all my work is saved automatically to my account. So everything I do is automatically saved. I don't have to worry about manually saving. Another thing we can look at over here in the workspace, though, before we continue, are some other features. Rulers, grids, guides, snapping, right? So if you're approaching an object and it gets close, you want it to snap so that it's a little magnet that makes sure it lines up nicely. And what you could also do that's really cool is show a layout grid. Now, if you're working with a grid system, this is a great opportunity to lay out your template, right? So you turn that on, and you'll see these blue columns appear. And if you're working with a 12 grid system, you can change these values over here. So if I change this to 12, and you can change your column width and gutters and margins and all that. Usually I'll just change the columns. The rest it's too much detail. So by changing that value to 12, I can change the number of columns in my design. If some of you are working with 16, just change that value and it automatically assigns 16 columns in there. So you can use that, and you can't interact with them. They're just there as guides. So now you have a great way to line up your work and scale it in such a way that if you're using a grid system, will look fantastic. Right? So if we have our logo there, let's say we add a navigation bar across here. The second part will focus more on using these tools in action, but just keep an eye out what's happening here on the right hand side. And on the left, we have our stencils, we have our pages, right? So here's our first page. You can create a new page over here. You can create a folder to better organize your work. You can trash stuff, and you can duplicate existing pages. So if you've done 90% of the layout and you want to try something else, then you can just duplicate, play around with it, and have some fun. Now, obviously, there aren't unlimited pages and objects you can use. The free plan only allows for 300 objects. So every time you pull out one of these elements here from the what do you call them? Stencils. Thank you. Every time you pull one of these out, it counts towards your 300 object quota. Again, I mentioned these things get saved automatically, so you don't have to worry much. If you really insist on uploading images, then you have to go to the Images tab over here, and it allows you to add, a couple of images that you can then click and drag to add to your design. So, for wireframes, this is something that I'm a little bit against, because now you're starting to distract people from what it is you're trying to do here, which is focus on the functionality of your page. Because I can tell you, from experience, people are just going to look at this and focus on the colors. They're going to start asking, is that the right pink? Should we make this blue? Should we change that image to something else? That's not the point of this assignment right now. You should be worried about, okay, this is where that picture is going to go, and what should we have at the navigation bar, and make sure everything's accounted for. Is the calendar going to go here, or should it be lower down on the page? Is our video going to be 6 columns wide, or should we just keep it 5? Things like that. Those are decisions that need to be happening right now. Will there be a Google map in my footer, and how big can I make it max? So these are the decisions you need to be making, and save the other stuff for later. Like, do you need your calendar lined up with that video, or stuck up here? What looks better? Now, the colors, the typography, etc., that's to be decided later on. That's going to be in the high fidelity mockup. This blurb of text, there you go. So using these tools allows you to rapidly prototype stuff. And just to wrap things up, feel free to explore. There's a bunch of icons you can use as well. And if there's just too much stuff and you just want to look for something, for example, shopping cart, you can just start typing for it, and usually these stencils will have keywords attached to them so that you can find them fairly easily in the list. And now you can click on X to clear that search term and view all of them again. This wraps up the presentation for how to work with mockups and just getting familiar with the interface. Keep in mind that we want to keep things simple at this point. Part 2 of this video is actually going to go through the process of putting together an actual layout very quickly, just so you can see how it's approached and what to avoid. Hope you tune in for that. If not, happy creating wireframes, and make sure you do them rapidly and clean. Talk to you soon. Thanks.